Oh, it's checkmate. He's so tricky.
He's on vacation, not here in Fabi's Throw, one of his favourite destinations, nor on the beach with Magnus and Hans building sandcastles, but here, in the land of the rising sun, and he found time to log on, stream, and just bully the opposition in this week's Tilted Tuesday, a weekly online chess tournament for the most elite grandmothers. Who was he bullying today? Well, only the third highest rated chess player of all time, Fabiano Flexington Caruana. With the white pieces, it's Hikaru Nakamura in this one. Classic encounter, checkmate finish to come. It's awesome. He opens the game here with his favourite pawn b3, and after pawn d5, here we have it, a new pope, no longer even a bishop. It's so powerful. Fabi now develops his one with a whoosh. Normally you see the knights go first, but here he wants to get it outside the pawn chain. We see this one develop into the game. Sure, you could shatter the structure, but you give up the bishops, not very nice. So instead the knight develops. Now Hikaru takes some central space, pawn e6, the knights develop, natural stuff, pawn e3, the bishops enter the game here, castles, and you might be thinking castles, but no, Hikaru wants to imbalance the game. He starts with pawn h3, the bishop drops back. Surely now you go for something a bit natural, castles, maybe a bit of pawn a3 to then go c4, but no, we see instead Gary the debt collector just launched down, ready to bang down some doors here. The bishop drops back. We now see an exchange. How to recapture? Well, this is natural as cheese and chips because you don't weaken this square critically. Always capture towards the center, they say. And c4 looking kind of natural. But again, Hikaru wants to play a bit strangely. He goes pawn g5. Now you do kick the knight, send it a bit offside. It's got no jumps now, but you're leaving weaknesses behind. This is the double-edged sword. Now the pawn's under fire, so it's defended with the rook, and now we get this explosive pawn push, or am I saying it wrong? c5 is not as explosive as the dynamite c4, right? And it looks like Hikaru's going to play it here. Everyone's wanting him to do it. Kasparov especially wants him to set up that pawn cube, the pube as it's known in the business, but not played. We get queen e2, maybe hinting at castle's queenside, but Fabi now takes. You could take in different ways here, but Hikaru decides to go with the bishop. Keep an eye on the king. Possibly e5 could be on the way one day, but first we see rook c8, and it's going after that backwards pawn. Therefore, now Hikaru explodes with the c4 move, but his king's still in the center. You can't castle this way, getting a bit drafty. So this is why Fabi now streams out with the queen, trying to expose that monarch. And if you take on d5, well then the bishop could come out soon, you're opening the rook, looks a bit scary. So instead, Hikaru plays the cool AF, that's cool as Fabi, king f1. Now it's met with this rook fe8 move, but it's not best. Actually, pawn e5, very strong. Because although it looks like you can capture twice, which you can, once you take here, you got problems. Because you hit the bishop, and if you play this, yep, holding on to everything. No, you're not. There's the Mario smash, rook takes, and then of course you win that exchange, plus the rook's collapsing if you don't move it, and now the pawn drops all over. So we come back here. No time for, what was I looking at? This one, sorry, e5 was strong rather, but instead rook fe8 was played, missed. Now we get pawn a3, also not the best because e5 can be played, but instead we get takes on c4. Now the knight charges in with tempo. This is what Fabi has planned, hitting the pawn, and this is an awesome move by Hikaru because it looks natural to push this pawn, but then there's some really nice shots for black with b5, e5. You really start kicking these minor pieces about. But what Hikaru does is lean back. He whispers, "Do you even rook lift, bro?" as that one enters the game. And not only does it intercept the attack, but it now supports things laterally here. You know, if you go b5 now, there's this incredible pawn e4, and the queen is checkmated. Now knight f4 weirds it up, but then queen e3 and so on. But this one's just completely run out of squares. So Fabi therefore swings it across. He spots those threats. He could now take the B pawn if Hikaru takes the A pawn, but that looks weird to leave this knight losing its outpost. So rook B1 covers the pawn. A6 looking natural, or rook ed8 to hit this open file, but Fabi plays the kind of meek bishop f8, just a waiting move, but now Hikaru can hit the queen. It drops back here. Now he offers the exchange of the ladies. We're into an endgame. No longer does it matter that his king never castled properly, and Fabi should check from the second rank here. Gives him the play he needs to keep a rough balance. But instead, he spawns this seahorse. Is looking such a monster there. However, there's a problem. Hikaru can now take it. Great positional understanding of when to give up that bishop, because after rook takes, he's now opened this one to swing laterally. The knight's got a square here, and all his pieces can just flow into the attack nicely. Not with that move, then you drop a knight. So instead we see rook c4, challenging this strong piece. If you double, by the way, we'll find you can take first or immediately go rook d1. White remains in charge. So instead we see takes immediately. Knight takes definitely possible, but Hikaru goes with the pawn. Again, constantly looking to imbalance the game, create the winning chances. Now we see pawn b6, rook d1 takes the file, and Lord Hans Feingold winces at this move of pawn to f6, weakening the king. Giving a pawn here. What's Fabi playing at? Well, this guy was miserably offside, so that's the idea. Just desperately trying to get it back into the game somehow. So this one just dropped. Now we see rook c8 going for the activation after that pawn, but Hikaru ignores. Great understanding, rook d7. And if you take this pawn, well, you're leaving your back rank critically weak. That piece is going to drop off the board. No good. So instead we see this pawn push to e5, but there are so many beautiful lines here. Well, not beautiful, but crushing. You know, you could take, simply win a pawn. This is a great endgame, still a terrible knight. Instead, Hikaru goes for takes on f6, and it does look a bit weird, because after pawn captures, you are letting this knight out the box now potentially. Knight d2 is played, covering the pawn. Pawn a5 now on the board, saving that one which was attacked here, but now king d3, bishop b4 hits the knight, and this is a strange moment, because the knight's under fire. Surely you play the move of knight e4, hopping forward, keeping this guy honest. If you ever push, well, then you get g5 and you start hopping like that. These knights just hugely dominant, but we don't see that played. Instead, Hikaru goes e4, and suddenly these knights just not as dominating as they could have been. Now, you don't want to, though, take on d2. It does set a trap here. This is what Hikaru was playing for. You can see Ival Barovich shooting up because you go to Forktown, population Fabi, and that's game over. So we don't see the knight captured. Instead, knight g7, the horsey that wanted to be a bishop. Now we see knight b3 played, and this really shows the misery of that one. You know, look at that hop. Now it's consigned to going this way. We see this knight e6 move, and Fabi fighting back in a great manner. Looking at dark squares, h4 is played. The computer finds this outlandish b5 move now as the best shot, because if takes like that, the rook invades. If takes the other way, you push a4, dislodge the knight, then land a check. Craziness on the board, but of course that was missed. Knight f8, no mate as they say. We see captures, rook takes back, and now this is why Hikaru practices his pony maneuvering. For moments like this, he's looking to spin round to the f5 square, so Fabi looks to shut that down straight away. f3 looking kind of natural here, but it's just a different way to go. The rook still invades with check. Here's a sample line. Okay, game goes on. Or you could have taken here, I guess. Didn't really check that out. Or here, fine. different game. Instead, Hikaru wastes no time activating that knight. We see takes with check, king recaptures. Yes, this guy drops, but now the knight hits g3 and it's well on its way to the promised land. Rook f4 check, the pawn drops. Which pawn to take? Well, this one is natural because you stop the outside passed runner, which could have helped mate the king. Rook c7 defends that pawn. The bishop slides into the game, creates this monster threat on the dark squares, so Hikaru sidesteps here and brings the king into the danger zone. And now if you play that move, well, you can always play a check, or you could check from here, then bring the knight. It gets dangerous. So rook h6 check was played. It's a good move, kicks this guy back, and now this is the moment where Fabi goes wrong here. He should play bishop b4 or rook f8, or king f8 rather, but he blunders harder than the guy at the St. Louis Chess Club in the 2024 Chess 960 Showdown who completely forgot to serve the toothpicks at the buffet for lunch. Awful times, awful scenes there for the players. What does Fabi do? Rook h4, and it's a big blunder because now when you go knight e4, real octopus in the center, the bishop's under fire, saves itself. That's given the double question marks of doom because rook h2 was better, but fine, this is natural, cover some stuff. Now when you go knight f6 check, there's a problem. Not only is the king getting boxed in, but where the rook is placed on this fourth rank, you can't give checks to the white king. So after this one is played, if you'd come this way, by the way, then the king steps into e6, threatens rook f7 mate, and this is where the knight helps out, covers all the squares now, king's in a mating net. And if you step this way, like in the game, well, now we see king g6 stepping in via the other route. Rook c8 is a threat of checkmate, and again, you can't check. You know, this is the big problem. If the rook was here, you could check from behind, you save the draw. But this one was played, bishop f8 covering that checkmating threat, but rook c8 anyway, and the poor bishop's dropping from the board. All you can do is desperately check, but king f7 ended the game on the spot because what to do? The bishop's dropping, and more than that, the king's getting checkmated, completely trapped in a kind of Anastasia's mating net trap. Nothing else to say. You can desperately do this, but it just delays it for a moment. So this is the final position. Hikaru cleaned up at the tournament. Magnus was languishing down in 16th or something. Great performance by him from Japan, and they'll be on with the late title Tuesday as I'm making this video. Hope you enjoyed, and have a look at the video on screen if you want to see another incredible Hikaru Nakamura game, Queen Sacrifice, not to be missed. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon. Cheers.